So, I'm going to do a book review really quick of this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, and I'm just going to say what I got from it. So I read this book a couple of months, so I'm just drawing from memory from what I read, but I read it very intently. I actually read it with a book club with like 3 or 4 or 5 other people, depending on how many people showed up for like the Zoom meetings. But I saw this book like years ago. So when I started getting into like looking at dating advice, overcoming my own social anxiety by approaching women on my college campus to become more confident, when I started pushing myself in new social situations, I started getting into like dating advice, naturally, just what are women attracted to, blah, blah, blah. So I already kind of knew, just by looking at the title of the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, like what it would be about and what some of the advice, at least the advice that concerned dating, would be. Like, not being a pushover, not standing up for yourself, still being a gentleman, but also not filtering what you're saying as much and just respectfully speaking your mind, standing up for yourself, like being yourself and not bending over backwards for other people. I kind of like knew that it would involve some type of advice like that. The thing though, there are really 2 things in the book that kind of opened my mind. So one of those things was the part where it talks about how men were basically raised by women, not just at home by their mothers, but in the school system, because most of our teachers were women. So what really made sense to me in the book was how it talked about guys are kind of conditioned from a young age to win the approval of women because we have female teachers. Now this is all theory, by the way, and I'm just going to say my opinion, stuff that makes sense to me. Anyway, so we're always trying to win the approval of women. Our teachers, we're trying to get A's to impress our teachers so we can move on to the next grade, blah, blah, blah. We're trying to behave for our female teachers. So we grow up basically getting the approval of women. And you can see that in relationships, guys trying to get the approval of the woman they like or their partner, walking on eggshells in a relationship because they don't want to misbehave for their partner. And this leads to like less attraction because they're not being themselves, they're not standing up for themselves, they're not being men. So that really made sense to me. And I actually got a little bit fired up when I was reading that part because I was like, yeah, that is true. I mean, modern women or modern feminists or stuff on the internet, people on the internet like to say like, men oppress women, but it's like, I've never experienced that in my life. I was born in 1994 and I've always tried to get the approval of women, whether it was my parent or a teacher or other authority figures that I was growing up around that were women. And then there was pressure to like perform for women that I wanted to be in a relationship with. And I was like, this is so true. I personally don't feel as though I've ever oppressed women, even though they say like in history, women have been oppressed. I look around and I see equal opportunity. Actually, I see sometimes more opportunity depending on what your race or gender is, because certain companies will just hire people just because they are a woman or just because they are a certain race. Anyway, without getting too much into that, that's one thing I noticed, and I got really fired up about that topic because it just seemed true. Yeah, I don't know. I got a little fired up and a little angry because I'm like, yeah, I had never really seen an advantage to being a man, and I don't want to complain because I love being a man. I don't know, I feel pretty good about being a man. I feel like I have more drive. I feel like I do speak up. You can argue whether that's culturally influenced or whether that's something in my genes, whatever. Anyway, that was one thing that I got from the book. Just this awareness of always kind of like trying to win the approval of the opposite gender. The second thing was it talked about, like, it gave a bunch of examples of nice guys. You know, the nice guy in the relationship who gets walked all over, who doesn't speak his mind and lets his wife control him. The guy who just gets pushed around by everybody, gets pushed around by his boss, etc., etc. Just people in his life push him around because he lets them, because he's always trying to win the approval of other people. Then there was one that was like the sexually impulsive one that's addicted to porn and is constantly like wiring approval and validation to like sex. And that's one that really like hit me. Because I mean, I'm a millennial. I grew up when the internet was becoming a thing. So late middle school, going into high school, I did discover stuff on the internet. I did discover that you could Google, you know, naked women or whatever, and just got kind of hooked on that. Sorry, I'm kind of like filtering myself because I don't want this video to be too like raunchy. You know, I don't know who's what. I'm assuming you're an adult watching this, so whatever. But anyway, yeah, that impulsivity to like try to get like approval or like sexual approval, whatever you want to call it, just impulsivity. Like they had this example of a guy who was addicted to porn, who chased women, who constantly, I don't know if they mentioned this, but the way I took it was he felt like a man, or he felt only good when he was getting sexual approval, when he was having sex, when he was, you know, getting that validation. So that kind of hit me because I can relate to that a lot. So yeah, those are the two things that I got from the book. Other than that, I went in just kind of knowing that a lot of the stuff I would understand already, because I felt like years ago I had already kind of learned to speak my mind, to kind of stand up for myself, to know what women are really attracted to in a man, which is somebody who's not afraid to be himself, to stand up for himself, still being a gentleman, but, you know, not being a pushover, not being a doormat, just standing up for himself, and going for what he wants, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that's my book review. No More Mr. Nice Guy. Hope you enjoy it.